Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. They buried his father. He buried their lies. The words echoed in Jack Ward's mind as he sat in the flickering light of his father's old study. The heavy oak desk, once a symbol of authority, now felt like a monument to betrayal. The air was thick with the scent of aged leather and gun oil. His father's world, his father's secrets. Jack's fingers trembled as he replayed the voicemail, his father's voice hoarse and urgent. "Jack, listen carefully. They're coming. Protect the truth. Trust no one." A static crackle. Then, nothing. Silence, as deafening as a gunshot. He stared at the phone, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. His father, General Douglas Ward, had been everything to him. A soldier's soldier. A man of unwavering honor, or so Jack thought. But the whispers had already started. He took his own life. Disgrace was too much to bear. Jack's gut twisted. No, his father wasn't a coward. He didn't believe in endings like that. A framed photo on the desk caught his eye, him as a boy, perched on his father's shoulders, the sun catching the medals on Douglas's chest. That smile, it was the smile of a man who believed in something bigger than himself. Jack's fists curled around the phone. He wouldn't let that smile be the last memory. He opened the drawer. His fingers closed around cold steel, his father's sidearm. The weight of it was familiar, a comfort and a promise. Jack's breath came out in a shudder. "This isn't over, Dad. I'll find them. I'll finish this." He didn't flinch as he loaded the gun, the metallic click echoing in the stillness. One last look at the voicemail, his father's voice, cracked and haunted, and he slipped the phone into his pocket. Outside, the night was cold and silent. But Jack's heart burned hot with a singular purpose. No more lies. No more silence. They buried his father. Now, he would bury their lies. Before we move ahead, I just want to say, your support truly means everything. We're building something special here, and our next big goal is reaching 10,000 incredible subscribers. If you're feeling the emotions in these stories, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe now, be part of this amazing journey, and let's keep growing together. Your one click can make a real difference. Let's continue the story. Rain drummed on the coffin as they lowered General Ward into the earth. The military band played low and solemn, each note a dagger to Jack's chest. Faces blurred through his tears. Officers in pressed uniforms, medals glinting beneath the gray sky. They stood in perfect rows, eyes cold and distant. Jack saw the truth in those eyes. They weren't mourning. They were covering. He clenched his jaw, fists balled in the pockets of his father's coat. The coat smelled like his father, smoke and sweat and old whiskey. It was a comfort and a curse. "Your father was a hero," the chaplain droned, but the words were hollow, drifting in the wind like ashes. Jack's mother sobbed quietly, clutching a folded flag to her chest. She looked smaller than he'd ever seen her, fragile and lost. He reached for her hand, but she flinched away, her eyes filled with something he couldn't name. Fear? Shame? Or was it the same doubt that clawed at his own gut? As the final shot of the honor guard cracked the air, Jack's eyes locked on the row of officers flanking the grave, General Keene at their head. The man's face was carved from stone, his lips pressed in a thin, unreadable line. Keene had been his father's closest friend once. Now he looked like a vulture, waiting for the last breath to leave the corpse. Jack's nails dug into his palms, the sting grounding him. This isn't right, he thought. My father didn't die by his own hand. He wouldn't. The rain fell harder, soaking through the coat, dripping from his hair. But Jack didn't move. He let the rain wash over him, let it cleanse the lie from his skin. He didn't know how yet, but he would find the truth. And when he did, he'd carve it into the bones of the men who stood before him, playing at grief while burying their sins. For now, he stood silent, a soldier's son in a storm of betrayal. The funeral was over, but the storm inside Jack was just beginning. Back at the family home, the air was thick with unspoken things. His mother moved like a ghost, her hands trembling as she packed away his father's belongings. She wouldn't look at him, wouldn't speak his name. "He's gone," she whispered when Jack tried to talk. "Let him rest." But Jack couldn't rest. He wouldn't. He went in his father's study, the door creaking on old hinges. The room was exactly as his father had left it. Maps of battlefields pinned to the walls, stacks of worn leather journals, a single lamp burning low. Jack's throat tightened. Every inch of this room was a testament to the man his father had been. The man the world said was a coward. On the desk, a wooden box lay open, metals glinting under the lamplight. Jack ran his fingers over them, feeling the weight of each one. Bronze star, silver star, the Medal of Valor. They meant nothing now, stripped of honor, tarnished by whispers. He turned them over, looking for some sign, some hidden truth. Nothing. His eyes fell on the blood-stained uniform hanging behind the desk. The bullet hole in the jacket was clean, precise, too clean for a suicide. Jack's breath caught. His father had been a marksman, steady and sure. But this shot, this wasn't a soldier's last breath. It was an execution. Jack's pulse quickened. "No one shoots themselves that clean," he muttered. He took down the jacket, feeling the blood stiffen the fabric. A single tear slipped down his cheek. "Dad, what did they do to you?" His fingers brushed against the lining, and there, stitched into the seam, a small, worn flash drive. Jack's breath hitched. A hidden message. A final clue. He slid the drive into his pocket, his resolve hardening like steel. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Outside, the wind howled like a war cry, and Jack knew one truth. He wouldn't rest until he had answers. Until his father's honor was restored, and every last lie was buried in the dirt beside that coffin. Jack sat alone at his father's old desk, the cracked leather chair creaking beneath him. The room smelled of old tobacco and sweat, ghosts of a life built on discipline and devotion. The drive he'd found felt like a living thing in his pocket, its weight heavier than any metal. He plugged it into his laptop, the screen flickering as it loaded. One file appeared, Operation Ghost. Jack clicked it open, breath held tight in his chest. A video played. Grainy footage of a dusty war zone. His father, younger, eyes sharp and unyielding, stood among soldiers, men who moved like shadows in the dirt. Their faces were hard, but their eyes were haunted. General Ward's voice cut through the static. "We were tasked to find the truth, but the truth is a dangerous thing." Jack leaned forward, heart pounding. "I thought I could keep it safe. I thought I could protect you from it, Jack. But the truth, it's coming for us all." The video ended with a sudden blur of static, a final whisper that raised the hairs on Jack's neck. "Trust no one." Jack closed the laptop slowly, his breath ragged. He turned to the shelves, pulling down one of his father's journals. The pages were filled with cramped handwriting, battle plans, field notes, fragments of a mind at war with itself. He read until his eyes blurred, stories of brothers lost, of missions gone wrong. But there was one phrase, scrawled again and again like a prayer. The truth must not die. He sank back, memories of his father's voice echoing in the stillness. His father had been many things, a hero, a killer, a man of honor. But above all, he had been a believer in the truth. Jack clenched his fists. He would not let his father's final act be buried in the silence of polite lies. He would find the ghost company. He would uncover what they died to protect. He stood, the weight of the gun at his side a grim promise. Outside, the night pressed in like a living thing. But Jack welcomed it. He was done with shadows. The next morning, Jack's eyes burned from lack of sleep. The sun crept through the curtains, painting the room in bruised gold. He poured a mug of black coffee, bitter and scalding, and stared at the drive on the table. He turned it over in his fingers, feeling the cold metal, the secrets it held. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You're in over your head, Jack. Stop digging." Jack's jaw tightened. He deleted the message, his pulse hammering. They knew he had the drive. They were watching, but he wasn't turning back. He opened the drive again, sifting through the files. One folder was locked with a password. He tried combinations, birthdays, codes, everything he could think of. Nothing. Frustration clawed at him. His gaze fell on the journals, and a memory sparked. His father's mantra, whispered like a benediction every night before bed. Duty, honor, truth. He typed the words in, one by one. The folder clicked open. A flood of documents, photos, mission logs, evidence of something massive. Jack's breath caught as he scrolled through. Images of atrocities, names of officers, some he recognized, men he'd shaken hands with at his father's funeral. He clicked a video file. Soldiers in night vision green, voices hushed. Then, chaos, gunfire, screams. A woman's voice, pleading in a language he didn't know. And his father's voice, hard as iron. We don't leave witnesses. Jack's stomach lurched. His father, his hero, was part of this. But the video showed something else too. His father turning, shouting, "No more. We end it here." A gunshot. Black. Jack closed the laptop with a trembling hand. His father had tried to stop it, tried to expose them. That was why he was dead. The door creaked behind him. His mother stood there, eyes red and swollen. "Jack, please, let this go," she whispered. He shook his head, voice low. "I can't. He deserves the truth. And so do I." The night was cold and sharp as Jack made his way to the bar. It sat like a scar at the edge of town, neon sign flickering in the dark. Inside, the air was thick with stale beer and secrets. He pushed through the crowd, his eyes scanning for the man his father had trusted most. Noah Miller, the ghost company's second-in-command. Noah sat alone at the end of the bar, hunched over a glass. His hair was longer than Jack remembered from the funeral, streaked with gray. His eyes were red-rimmed, the kind of red that doesn't come from drink alone. Jack slid onto the stool beside him. "Noah." Noah didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here, kid. You were my father's friend. He trusted you." Noah let out a low laugh, bitter and cracked. "Trust. That's a dead word, Jack." Jack's hands curled around the glass the bartender shoved in front of him. "He didn't kill himself, Noah. I know it." Noah finally turned, his eyes hollow. "You think you're ready for this? The truth doesn't set you free. It buries you alive." Jack leaned in, his voice ablaze. "I'd rather be buried in the truth than live in the dark." A long silence. The jukebox played something slow and mournful. Finally, Noah sighed. "All right. You want answers? Meet me tomorrow. Old storage unit by the docks. Bring your resolve. Jack, you're gonna need it." Jack nodded once, pushing back from the bar. As he stepped into the night, the neon flickered behind him, a final warning in red. But Jack didn't flinch. His father had died for this. He wouldn't stop until the last lie was torn from the shadows. The night air cut through Jack like a blade as he left the bar. His mind churned with Noah's warning, but resolve burned hotter than doubt. He wouldn't turn back. Not now. He walked the streets of his childhood, each familiar corner a memory of his father's voice. The way the general had taught him to stand straight, to speak with conviction. Those lessons felt like anchors now, heavy but unbreakable. Back at the house, Jack found his mother in the kitchen, her eyes hollow as she scrubbed a plate that was already clean. "Where were you?" she asked softly. "Finding answers." "There's nothing left to find, Jack. You're chasing ghosts." He met her gaze, searching for something in her eyes, maybe permission, maybe understanding. "I have to know, Mom. I have to." She turned away, shoulders hunched. "Your father, he was a good man, but good men make enemies. Just promise me you'll be careful." Jack said nothing. He went to the study instead, the only place that still felt like his father's voice. He pored over the logs again, tracing lines on yellowed maps, names and numbers scribbled in the margins like dying prayers. He found a note, one he'd missed before. "Noah knows more than he says." A chill ran through him. Jack sat back, the lamplight flickering over his father's medals. They weren't just decorations, they were burdens. Proof of a life built on sacrifice. His fingers brushed over them, and he swore he could feel the pulse of old battles, of choices made in blood and silence. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the window panes. Jack closed his eyes, letting the noise steady him. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I'll know the truth." He rose from the chair, the weight of his father's legacy settling on his shoulders like a cloak. Tomorrow, he would meet Noah at the docks. Tomorrow, he would step into the shadows his father had tried to outrun. The docks were a desolate place at dawn. Cranes rising like skeletons in the mist, the scent of salt and rust thick in the air. Jack stood in the shadows, the cold biting through his jacket. He watched as Noah emerged from the fog, shoulders hunched against the wind. "You came," Noah rasped, his breath ghosting in the morning chill. "I'm done waiting," Jack said. Noah's eyes were bloodshot, but sharp. "What I'm about to show you, it's more than just files and names. It's a graveyard." He led Jack to a storage unit, rusted metal groaning as he pried it open. Inside, the space was cramped and cold, filled with battered crates and yellowed files. Noah pulled a tarp away, revealing a faded banner, "Ghost Company." Jack's breath caught. "These are their records?" Noah nodded. "Everything we did, everything we saw. Your father, he tried to shut it down. They wouldn't let him." He handed Jack a battered folder. Inside were photos, grainy shots of soldiers, faces half in shadow. Jack's father was there, younger, eyes fierce with conviction. "This was our unit. We were the tip of the spear, until we realized the spear was aimed at innocents." Jack's voice was tight. "You knew." Noah's shoulders slumped. "We all knew. But your father, he was the only one who had the spine to fight back. He tried to drag it all into the light." Jack flipped through the photos, each one a testament to blood and betrayal. "And the generals?" Noah's jaw tightened. "Keen. The others. They buried the truth in the desert and left your father to die with it." Jack looked up, his eyes hard. "Then we'll bring it back." For a moment, the silence between them was heavy, a vow unspoken but understood. Noah clapped a hand on his shoulder, voice low. "You're your father's son, Jack. But this road, it doesn't end clean." Jack met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm not here for clean. I'm here for the truth." Jack and Noah spent hours in the cold storage unit, piecing together the fragments of a mission that had never officially existed. The records were raw and damning, orders scribbled in code, photographs of civilians caught in crossfire, logs that spoke of executions buried under the phrase collateral neutralization. Jack's hand shook as he read the last page, a field report in his father's neat handwriting. "This ends here. I'll burn for this if I must, but I will not let them rewrite our sins." He looked at Noah, his voice tight. "You were there that night. What really happened?" Noah lit a cigarette, his fingers trembling. Smoke curled around his words. "We were ordered to cleanse a village, said they were aiding the enemy. But there were no weapons, no soldiers. Just families. Your father," he snapped, "ordered us to stand down. Keen, he gave the counterorder." Jack felt his stomach twist. "And you followed it?" Noah flinched, shame flickering in his eyes. "I was a soldier, Jack. We were trained to follow. But your father, he was the only one who remembered we were human first." Jack let the words sink in, the weight of them settling in his bones. "I need to find the others. Rachel, Eli, the ones who stood with him." Noah crushed the cigarette under his boot. "Rachel's in hiding. Eli, he's gone dark. But if you're serious about finishing this, you'll need them. The ghost company died that night, but the truth didn't." Jack nodded slowly, his jaw set. "We bring them together. We bring it all to light." Noah's eyes softened for a moment. "This isn't just about your father anymore. It's about what they tried to bury." Jack felt it in his gut, a burning certainty. "Then let's start digging." Jack spent the night poring over every scrap of evidence in Noah's storage unit. The battered walls seemed to close in, but his mind was alive. Every photo, every coded phrase, another piece of the puzzle. Each detail was a whisper from the past, a ghost refusing to be forgotten. Noah watched him from the doorway, face shadowed in the flickering light. "You're driving yourself into the ground, Jack," he said, voice low. Jack didn't look up. "Every name on these pages is another reason to keep going." Noah sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "You've got your father's fire, I'll give you that. But fire can burn you alive if you're not careful." Jack paused, staring at a faded photograph of his father and Rachel, her fierce eyes, the rifle slung across her shoulder. She looked like she belonged in the shadows, a soldier of ghosts and silence. "Rachel," he said softly. "Where is she hiding?" Noah hesitated. "She vanished after the final mission. Rumor says she's living off-grid in the hills, no phone, no ties. She's been running from this for years." Jack's gaze hardened. "Then we bring her back. We need her, Noah. She was part of this. She has answers we don't." Noah's eyes met his, a flicker of something like respect in their depths. "All right. But once we find her, there's no turning back." Jack nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Then let's go." They packed up the files, carefully slipping them into waterproof bags. Noah checked the door once more, then locked it tight behind them. Outside, the docks were silent and slick with rain, the streetlights flickering like watchful eyes. As they walked, Jack felt a sense of purpose settle over him, heavy but clear. He was no longer chasing shadows. He was walking into them, head held high. Every step was another vow. He would find Rachel. He would rebuild the ghost company, piece by piece. And when he was done, there would be no lies left to bury. The road to the hills was long and winding, the landscape shifting from crumbling concrete to wild, windswept plains. Jack drove with steady hands, every mile bringing him closer to the heart of the storm. Noah sat in the passenger seat, silent but watchful. The air between them was charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. "Rachel's not going to come easy," Noah said finally, his voice rough. "She's been living with this guilt a long time. She might not want to see us." Jack's grip on the wheel tightened. "We're not giving her a choice." They arrived at dawn, the sky bruised with the promise of rain. The cabin was small and weather-beaten, half hidden by twisted pines. Smoke rose from the chimney, a thin thread of defiance against the cold. Jack stepped out, boots crunching on frosty grass. He approached the door, pausing for a moment as he felt the weight of every memory pressing in. He knocked twice, hard. No response. He tried again, his knuckles echoing in the silence. The door creaked open a crack, and Rachel's eyes appeared, sharp, suspicious, unblinking. "Jack Ward," she said flatly. "You should have stayed buried with the rest of them." Jack didn't flinch. "I need your help." She studied him for a moment, then swung the door wide. "Then come in," and closed the door. "If they're following you, I won't let them see my face." Inside, the cabin was a fortress of solitude, maps pinned to the walls, weapons cleaned and ready, a half-finished bottle of whiskey on the table. Rachel moved like a shadow, her movements precise and lethal. Noah watched her warily. "You still keeping the world at bay, huh?" She shot him a look. "You never could keep your mouth shut, Noah." Jack pulled out the battered file, laying it on the table. "It's all here, Rachel. The mission, the cover-up. My father's death. He didn't kill himself. You know that." Rachel's face hardened, her hands clenching around the whiskey glass. "I know," she said softly. "I was there, and I've been running from it ever since." Jack leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "Then it's time to stop running." Rachel's eyes searched Jack's face, the hard lines of a man who'd seen too much, who carried too much. She looked at Noah, her old comrade, the weight of 1,000 unspoken words between them. Finally, she let out a slow breath. "You think you're ready for this, Jack? You think you're ready to see what your father really died for?" Jack met her gaze without blinking. "I'm not here for half-truths, Rachel. I want it all." Her lips twitched, the ghost of a bitter smile. "Then sit down and listen." She poured whiskey into 3 glasses, her hands steady. She handed one to Jack, another to Noah. "To the dead," she said quietly. They drank in silence, the bitter burn of the whiskey a promise. Rachel sat across from Jack, her shoulders tense. "Your father was the best of us," she said, her voice low. "But he was also the most stubborn. He saw what we were becoming, what the mission had turned into. He tried to stop it." Noah spoke up, his voice hoarse. "And they branded him a traitor for it." Rachel's jaw tightened. "They called it cleaning up the mess. But it was murder. And your father, he couldn't live with it." Jack's knuckles whitened around his glass. "Who gave the final order?" Rachel hesitated. "General Keane. He was the architect. Your father tried to expose him, But Keen was always 2 steps ahead. He turned everyone against your father. Jack leaned back, the words sinking in. Then Keen's the one we bring down. Rachel met his gaze, eyes hard. You're talking about war, Jack. Once we start this, there's no going back. Jack's voice was cold, unwavering. Then let it be war. Rachel looked at Noah, then back at Jack. Slowly, she nodded. All right. We bring the ghost company back. We finish what your father started. And we make them pay. She raised her glass again, her voice steady. For the fallen. For the truth. For the ghosts. And in that moment, Jack knew they were no longer just soldiers of memory. They were warriors of the living past, and they would not rest until the last lie was buried. The air in Rachel's cabin crackled with unspoken tension. The whiskey bottle stood between them like a silent witness as they pored over the faded files and half-burned reports. Jack felt the weight of each page, names and faces, dates that read like gravestones. Rachel pulled out an old photograph, the edges worn, the ink smudged by time and sweat. In it, 5 soldiers stood in a desert of blood and secrets, her, Noah, Jack's father, Eli, and a man Jack didn't recognize. This was the ghost company, she said softly. Before everything turned to ash. Jack's eyes lingered on his father's face in the photo, so alive, so sure. It was a face that hadn't yet tasted betrayal. Where's Eli now? He asked. Rachel's jaw tightened. He went underground after the mission. He was our comms. If anyone has the rest of the files, it's him. Noah let out a slow breath, his fingers drumming on the table. Eli's always been a survivor. But he's also a coward when the heat's on. If Keen gets to him first, Jack cut in, his voice steel. Then we get to him before Keen does. Rachel nodded, her eyes glinting in the dim light. We find Eli. We get the full story. Then we end this. Jack rose, the weight of the mission settling over him like armor. He felt it in his bones. This was no longer about avenging his father alone. It was about every soul lost to the silence, every sin buried in the desert. We rebuild the ghost company, he said, his voice low and sure. We finish what they started. Rachel gave a tight smile, fierce and brittle. Then we're back in the fight. Noah's eyes darkened, but he raised his glass, the ghost of a grin on his lips. For the fallen, he said. Jack echoed him, the words tasting like blood and steel. For the truth. And with that, the pact was sealed. By dawn, they were on the road, heading into the city's industrial wastelands. The skyline rose like jagged teeth, the streets choked with steam and half-forgotten sins. Jack drove in silence, every mile bringing them closer to Eli, closer to the truth that had killed his father. Rachel sat in the back, her eyes scanning the horizon like a sniper's scope. Noah checked his sidearm, the metal glinting in the gray light. Eli's last known safe house is an old warehouse on the edge of the docks, Rachel said, her voice a low hum. It's rigged to be a fortress. He never trusted anyone, not even us. Jack's grip tightened on the wheel. He'll trust me. Or he'll talk to a bullet. They arrived at the warehouse as the sun burned through the morning fog. The building loomed over them, rusted metal and cracked windows, like a corpse in an industrial graveyard. Rachel scanned the door. No signs of forced entry. That's good. Means he's still inside. Noah moved to the side entrance, his steps silent. Jack felt the air thicken, each breath a warning. He knocked once, hard. Eli. It's Jack. We need to talk. A pause. Then a low voice from the shadows. Jack Ward. The general's son. What the hell are you doing here? Jack stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. I'm here for the truth, Eli. And you're going to give it to me. A latch clicked, and the doors swung open. Eli stood there, gaunt and pale, his eyes sharp with paranoia. You're playing with fire, kid, he muttered. This isn't some story to finish, it's a war. Jack pushed past him, the others close behind. Then let's finish it. Inside, the warehouse was a bunker, maps and coded files covering every surface. A hum of old computers filled the air. Eli's eyes darted from Jack to Rachel, to Noah, a flicker of old ghosts in their faces. You're really bringing the unit back? He asked, disbelief crackling in his tone. Jack didn't waver. We're not leaving this undone. Eli let out a low laugh, the sound hollow in the dark. Then you'd better be ready to burn the world down, Jack. Because that's what it's going to take. The warehouse felt like a tomb of secrets, the air thick with dust and memories. Jack followed Eli deeper inside, his footsteps echoing off concrete walls stained with rust. The others moved like shadows at his back, silent and watchful. Eli stopped at a battered metal cabinet, his fingers lingering on the lock. "Everything I have. It's here," he said softly. "But once you see it, there's no going back." Jack's jaw tightened. "Show me." Eli unlocked the cabinet, revealing stacks of hard drives and faded dossiers. Each file was a dagger aimed at the heart of the conspiracy. "These are the mission logs, communications, the orders, the cover-up, all of it," Eli said. His voice was tight, the words tasting like ash. Noah's eyes narrowed. "How did you get this out?" Keen would have buried it. Eli let out a humorless chuckle. "He tried, but I always kept a backup. Even back then. I knew the day would come when the truth would matter again." Jack reached for a file, his hand steady despite the tremor in his chest. He flipped through the pages, atrocities recorded in cold, military jargon. This is everything," he said, voice low. Eli nodded once. "It's the noose around Keen's neck. But he's not going to let it slip on easy." Rachel leaned against the wall, her rifle slung over her shoulder. "Then we make him. We have what we need. Now we hit him where it hurts." Eli's eyes flickered, a haunted glimmer. "You're talking about war, Rachel." She gave a cold smile. "It's already begun." Jack stepped back, his mind racing. "We'll bring it all to light. The files, the tapes, everything. But first, we need to get out of here alive." Noah clapped a hand on Jack's shoulder. "Then let's move. Keen's not going to wait for us to make the first move." Jack took one last look at the files, the weight of them sinking deep into his bones. This ends now. No more shadows. No more lies. The four of them shared a look, a silent oath, an unbreakable bond forged in betrayal and blood. Outside, the city waited. And with every step they took, they carried the ghosts of the past and the promise of a reckoning that could not be stopped. The warehouse door slammed shut behind them, the echo vibrating in Jack's bones. Outside, the early morning light was cut by long shadows, warehouses and cranes looming like silent sentinels. Jack felt the weight of the files in his pack, every word a nail in the coffin of the men who had killed his father. Noah scanned the street, his eyes hard. "We need to move." Keen has eyes everywhere. Rachel slipped her rifle from her shoulder, the click of the safety a promise. "Then let's vanish." They slipped through the back alleys, the city's industrial belly a warren of steel and grime. Jack's heart pounded, but every step felt like a vow he wouldn't falter. He wouldn't let them fade back into the darkness. They reached Noah's truck, parked in the shadows. As they loaded the files into the back, Rachel's voice cut the stillness. "Jack, once we do this, we're all in. There's no room for hesitation." Jack met her gaze, his voice steady. "I know. My father didn't flinch. Neither will I." Noah started the engine, and they drove into the morning fog. The city fell away behind them, the world outside a blur of cracked pavement and old sins. Jack stared at the files in his lap, feeling the weight of the words his father had left behind, truths written in blood. As they drove, Noah spoke, his voice low and grim. "We'll hole up in an old safe house near the river. It's off the grid. No cameras, no curious neighbors." Rachel nodded. "Good. We'll need time to plan. Keen's not going to wait for us to make the next move." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we don't wait either. We hit him before he sees it coming." The truck rumbled down the broken road, the dawn light burning through the fog. In the back, the files lay like coiled snakes, every word a weapon, every name a target. Jack felt a cold clarity settle over him. This was no longer just his father's fight. It was his, and he would see it through to the end. The safe house was a crumbling relic of war, brick walls pitted with old bullet scars, windows boarded tight. Inside, dust motes danced in the weak light, and the air smelled of old oil and gunpowder. Jack set the files on a battered table, his fingers tracing the edges of each page. "We need to sort this," he said. "Find what we can use, what we can expose." Rachel moved with purpose, her eyes scanning each document, her mind working like a soldier's rifle, quick, precise, lethal. Keen's name is in here a dozen times over. But we need more than words. We need evidence that can't be denied. Noah found an old radio in the corner, tuning it to static-laced military channels. Keen's already moving. I can feel it. He won't let this stay hidden. Jack took a breath, the smell of dust and rust sharp in his lungs. Then we moved faster. He flipped through the logs, finding his father's final mission report. The pages were blackened at the edges, like someone had tried to burn the truth away. But the words were still there, hard and unyielding. He wrote it all down, Jack said softly. Every name, every order. He knew they'd come for him. Rachel paused, her fingers tightening around a faded photograph of the ghost company. And he knew we'd have to finish it. Noah's voice was a low growl. We're not just soldiers anymore. We're the last line of the truth. And we're not backing down. Jack looked at them, two soldiers who had once been his father's brothers in arms. Now they were his. We do this together, he said. We bring the light to their darkness. They set to work, their movement steady and sure. Outside, the river flowed silent and black, the city's heart beating in the distance. But in the safe house, a different kind of heartbeat grew, a promise of reckoning. The hours slipped by in a haze of papers and whispered plans. The safe house felt like a war room, maps pinned to the walls, a single lamp casting flickering shadows. Jack's eyes burned from reading, but he couldn't stop. Every name, every date, it was a dagger pointed at the heart of the conspiracy. Rachel sat across from him, her brow furrowed in thought. Keen's next move will be to discredit us. He'll call us traitors, terrorists, anything to bury this again. Jack leaned back, his mind racing. Then we don't give him the chance. We go public. Full exposure. No shadows to hide in. Noah set down his radio, the static crackling in the tense air. There's a military gala in 2 days. Keen will be there. Press, high command, all of them. If we can get this in front of them. Rachel's eyes lit with a cold fire. Then the truth will be too loud to ignore. Jack's pulse quickened, the pieces falling into place. We show them who Keen really is. We let my father's voice be the final word. He pulled out a battered recorder, his father's final message, saved and hidden in the drive. The crackling voice of General Douglas Ward filled the room, every word a bullet. We fought for the truth. We bled for it. Don't let them bury it with me. The room fell silent, the weight of the words pressing down like a storm. Jack looked at Noah and Rachel, his voice steady. We're not just fighting for him. We're fighting for everyone they silenced. We end this. Noah's hand closed around his shoulder, rough and sure. Then let's finish it, Jack. For your father. For the ghosts. Rachel gave a single nod, her eyes blazing. For the truth. And in that moment, the safe house felt like the calm before the thunder. Outside, the river flowed cold and relentless. Inside, the war was about to begin. The next morning, the safe house was alive with purpose. Maps and mission files covered every inch of the table, the air thick with the scent of cold coffee and gun oil. Jack moved with quiet focus, every detail burned into his mind like a soldier's creed. Rachel scanned the plans one last time, her eyes sharp and calculating. We'll need to split up. Noah and I will secure the equipment, get the tapes and files ready for broadcast. Jack, you'll need to find a way into that gala. Jack nodded, his jaw set. I'll get in. Keen won't see me coming. Noah packed the files into a battered duffel, his face tight with worry. We have to be sure, Jack. Once we do this, there's no going back. I know, Jack said. This ends with Keen's lies laid bare. A sudden noise broke the tense calm, a creak of wood, too soft for the wind. Rachel's head snapped up. Someone's here. Before anyone could react, the door slammed open. A figure in combat fatigue stepped in, rifle raised. It was Eli. But something in his eyes was wrong, haunted and hard, a flicker of guilt in the flickering lamplight. Eli, Jack said, voice tight. Eli's rifle didn't waver. I didn't want to do this, Jack. But Keen, he has my family. If I didn't bring him what he wanted, the words hung in the air, a betrayal sharp as a blade. Rachel's face went cold. You led him to us? Eli's voice cracked. I had no choice. He'll kill them, Rachel. You know he will. Jack's pulse thundered in his ears. Eli, we trusted you. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then Noah longed, knocking the rifle away as the shot cracked through the air. The safe house exploded in chaos. Jack dove for cover, his mind a blur of rage and confusion. Rachel wrestled Eli to the ground, her voice a snarl. You gave him everything, didn't you? You coward. Eli's eyes filled with tears. I had no choice. Jack pulled Rachel back, his breath ragged. We can't kill him. He's not the enemy. Keen is. Noah's voice was low, dangerous. Then we move. Now. The safe house was no longer safe. The shadows were closing in. They fled the safe house in silence, the echo of gunfire still ringing in Jack's ears. The city was waking up around them, sirens in the distance, the rumble of trucks on cracked asphalt. But for Jack, the world felt hollow, the betrayal cutting deeper than any bullet. Noah drove fast, his knuckles white on the wheel. We need a new plan. Keen will know we're coming now. Jack stared out the window, the cold dawn light painting the streets in bruised colors. Eli was one of us. If he can be turned, how many others? Rachel's voice was hard as iron. We can't afford to doubt Jack. The mission doesn't stop because one man lost his spine. Jack met her gaze in the rearview mirror. You're right. But it means Keen is more desperate than we thought. He's playing for keeps now. They reached an abandoned train yard, steel tracks gleaming like old scars. They set up a makeshift base in an old switch house, the air thick with rust and the scent of oil. Jack laid out the files again, his hands shaking but sure. We have what we need, he said. The tapes, the logs, the mission reports. We expose Keen at the gala, no matter what it costs. Rachel checked her rifle, her movement sharp and practiced. And if he tries to stop us? Jack's voice was ice. Then we stop him first. Noah clapped a hand on Jack's shoulder. You're your father's son, Jack. But remember, this isn't just his fight anymore. It's ours. Jack nodded, the words sinking deep. Then we do it together. No more ghosts in the dark. As they planned, the wind howled through the broken windows, a cold promise in the early light. Jack felt the weight of every choice pressing down, but there was no fear, only the fire of purpose, bright and unforgiving. In the shadows, they became the truth's last line of defense. The day before the gala dawned gray and bitter, the city alive with the restless hum of secrets. Jack moved through the train yard like a man possessed, every muscle coiled tight with focus. Noah worked the radio, intercepting chatter, fragments of Keen's plans, each one a glimpse of the enemy's reach. Rachel cleaned her rifle with a soldier's precision, her face set and unreadable. Jack, she said, her voice cutting through the tense quiet. We need to talk about Eli. Jack paused, his hands stilling over the maps. What about him? Rachel's eyes were hard. He made his choice. He'll betray us again if we give him the chance. Jack's jaw tightened. I know, but he's also our only link to the final piece of Keen's plan. We can't ignore that. Noah looked up, his eyes shadowed. Trust is a currency we can't spend twice, Jack. If Eli crosses us again, we finish it. Jack felt the weight of those words settle in his bones. I won't let him stop us. This ends tomorrow, no matter what it takes. Rachel leaned closer, her voice low. Your father tried to protect us all. Don't let his memory blind you to the cost, Jack. The truth has claws. It doesn't let go. Jack nodded slowly, the pain in his chest a quiet burn. I know. And I'm ready. The sun broke through the clouds for a moment, the light cold and clear. Jack looked at the files spread before him, each one a testament to betrayal and blood. Tomorrow, we stand in the light, he said, his voice a vow. Keen's lies in with us. Noah cracked a thin smile. Then let's make it count. As night fell, they moved in silence, 3 soldiers bound by duty, by blood, by a promise that would not be broken. Outside, the city waited. Inside, they sharpened their resolve like blades. Tomorrow, the ghosts would walk in the light. The safe house hummed with quiet tension. Jack sat at the table, the battered tape spread before him like a war map. Rachel's rifle lay across her lap, her eyes distant but alert. Noah paced the floor, the wooden boards creaking beneath his boots. The air smelled of oil and sweat, the promise of battle heavy as thunder. Jack broke the silence. Tomorrow, the world sees what they tried to bury. Noah paused, looking at him hard. And if Keen tries to stop us? Jack's jaw tightened. Then he learns the truth can bleed. Rachel leaned back, her expression fierce. We're not just soldiers anymore. We're the last line of justice. Jack met her gaze. And we're going to make damn sure the truth doesn't die with us. Noah cracked a wry smile, but there was no humor in it. Then let's swear it. Here and now. Jack stood, his voice low and sure. We swear on the fallen. On every life they tried to erase. No more shadows. No more silence. Rachel's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. For the children in the crossfire. For the innocents we couldn't save. Noah's hand closed into a fist. For the brothers we left in the dirt. They stood together, hands pressed over the battered mission logs, the words of the dead beneath their palms. Jack's voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a promise that would never be broken. We finish this. We bury their lies with fire and blood. Outside, the wind rattled the broken windows, a hollow drumbeat against the night. But inside, the oath they spoke was iron. In that moment, the ghost company wasn't just a memory. It was alive again, forged in the promise of vengeance. As dawn broke, they prepared in silence. Jack cleaned his father's sidearm with careful precision, each motion a ritual of memory. Rachel checked her rifle one last time, her breath steady in the chill. Noah packed the tapes into a battered case, the final nail for Keen's coffin. The air was electric, the city waking around them. Sirens in the distance, the low rumble of early traffic. Life moving on, blind to the war about to break in the heart of the gala. Jack holstered the pistol, the cold metal a comfort against his hip. We move fast. We get the files in front of the cameras, and we make Keen answer to the world. Rachel's lips curved into a thin smile. No matter what happens, we don't let the truth die in the dark. Noah snapped the case shut. And if we go down? Jack met his eyes, unflinching. Then we go down fighting. But the truth goes on. They moved out, the cold morning air biting at their faces. The city's towers loomed ahead, steel and glass catching the pale light. It felt like marching into the jaws of a giant, beautiful and deadly all at once. Rachel fell in beside Jack, her voice low. Your father would be proud. He didn't fight for medals, Jack. He fought for this. Jack swallowed hard, the words tightening in his throat. Then let's make sure he didn't die for nothing. They reached the edge of the gala's district, grand buildings and marble facades, polished like the lies they housed. Jack felt the weight of the files in his bag, the last testament of men who had refused to be forgotten. Noah's voice was soft, almost a prayer. For the fallen. Rachel echoed him, her whisper sharp as a blade. For the truth. Jack nodded once, his eyes hard. For the ghosts. The gala was a palace of light and gold, every detail polished to a sheen that mocked the blood-soaked truths Jack carried in his bag. He moved through the crowd like a shadow, the weight of the mission pressing against every breath. Rachel slipped into the hall behind him, her dress simple and dark, her eyes scanning every corner. Noah kept to the edges, the battered case clutched like a lifeline. The music was a low hum, violins slicing through the air like whispers of deceit. Jack's eyes caught movement near the bar. Eli, hunched and wary, a ghost in a room of illusions. Jack pushed through the crowd, his voice a quiet growl. Eli. Eli turned, his face pale, sweat beating at his temple. Jack, you shouldn't be here. Keen's men are everywhere. Jack's jaw tightened. Then let them come. You have something for me. Eli's hands shook as he pulled a slip of paper from his pocket. It's a location, Keen's final cache. Everything he's hidden, everything he's used to stay in the shadows, it's all there. Jack's heart thudded, the world narrowing to that single piece of paper. Why give it to me? Eli's voice cracked. Because I can't live with what I've done, Jack. I've been running since the desert, but the ghosts, they're always there. Jack took the paper, his fingers closing tight around the last puzzle piece. Then stand with us now. Finish this. Eli shook his head, tears in his eyes. I can't. But you're your father's son. He believed in something bigger. Don't let that die. Jack reached out, his voice low. Then help me. Just this once. Eli met his gaze, something like peace flickering in his haunted eyes. For the ghosts, he whispered. And with that, Eli slipped away into the crowd, leaving Jack with the final map to Keen's sins. The address Eli gave them was a crumbling military complex on the edge of the city, a relic from another era, hidden behind rusted fences and barbed wire. Jack stood at the gate, the cold wind biting through his coat, the paper with the coordinates clenched in his hand. Rachel stepped up beside him, her eyes scanning the decaying walls. This is where he buried it all, she said, her voice a low murmur. Noah's breath steamed in the cold air. Then this is where we end it. They slipped through a breach in the fence, boots crunching on frost-bitten gravel. Inside, the halls were long and dark, echoing with the creak of old pipes and the hush of secrets. Jack felt his pulse in his ears, every step closer to the truth his father had died for. They found the vault behind a heavy steel door, its hinges groaning as they forced it open. Dust and cold flooded out, the air thick with the scent of old paper and something sharper, like the ghosts of broken promises. Noah flicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom. Shelves lined the room, stacked with boxes marked classified, the final testament of a forgotten war. Rachel moved to one of the boxes, her hands steady despite the tremor in her breath. These are the files, the final mission logs, the communications, everything. Jack felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. We take it all. We show the world. Noah's voice was a growl in the darkness. We've come too far to turn back now. They worked quickly, packing the files into duffels. Each paper felt like a heartbeat, proof that the dead still had a voice. Jack's hands shook as he found a folder marked with his father's name. He opened it, breath catching as he read the final report. Mission terminated. Truth must not die. Jack closed the folder, his voice a whisper in the cold. We're not just finishing his mission. We're burying the men who thought they could silence him. The wind howled outside, but inside the vault, the silence was absolute, a promise that this would be the last time the truth was buried. The gala shimmered with light and music as Jack and Rachel arrived, the final pieces of the mission hidden beneath tailored suits and cold resolve. Noah was already inside, his battered case tucked under his arm, moving through the crowd like a man with nothing left to lose. Rachel's voice was calm in Jack's ear. Keen will be here, surrounded by allies, smug in his power. He won't see the knives at his back. Jack adjusted his tie, the weight of the files in his inner pocket a silent anchor. He'll see them when it's too late. The ballroom was a cathedral of lies, gold chandeliers casting warm light on the polished marble, the air perfumed with money and power. Officers and dignitaries laughed and drank, their eyes blind to the storm gathering in their midst. Jack moved with purpose, each step deliberate. He caught Noah's gaze across the room, the older man giving a single nod. It was time. Rachel slipped away, her dress blending into the swirl of color and laughter. She moved like a shadow, her eyes always scanning, always ready. Jack found Keen near the stage, a glass of champagne in hand, his smile thin and cold. The general's eyes flicked to Jack, a flicker of recognition sparking in their depths. Jack Ward, he said, his voice smooth as silk. I'd heard you were sniffing around the past. Jack smiled, his voice calm. I'm done sniffing. I'm here to finish what my father started. Keen's smile didn't waver, but Jack saw the cold calculation flicker behind it. Careful, son. Some ghosts are best left buried. Jack's voice was a blade, soft and lethal. Not tonight. He slipped away before Keen could reply, the truth burning in his pocket. The final files, the final words, ready to cut through the lies once and for all. The music swelled around them, but Jack felt only the pounding of his heart. This was the night the truth would stand in the light. In the gala's heart, The air buzzed with polite applause as Keen took the stage. Jack watched from the shadows, the final mission logs clutched in his hand, his father's voice echoing in his mind. Rachel's whisper crackled in his earpiece. "We're ready. Noah's at the projector. When you give the word, we hit them with everything." Jack nodded, his breath steady. "Do it." The lights dimmed as Keen began to speak, his words a polished lie. "We gather tonight to honor the legacy of those who gave everything for this nation." Noah's voice was a quiet rasp. Rolling the tape, now. The projector flickered to life, the warm glow of the gala replaced by the harsh green of night vision footage. Soldiers in the desert, the cold calm of death in their eyes. Gasps rippled through the room as the images played, innocent lives ended in cold efficiency, orders given in voices Jack had heard only in his nightmares. "We don't leave witnesses." Jack's father's voice cut through the static, clear and unyielding. "No. We end this here." The room erupted in chaos, people turning, voices raised, the truth too loud to ignore. Keen's face went white, the mask slipping to reveal the fury beneath. "Shut it down," he barked, but the images kept playing, undeniable, damning. Rachel moved to Jack's side, her voice fierce. "This is it. They can't run from it now." Jack watched the generals in the crowd, their medals dull in the harsh light of the truth. "They'll try," he said quietly. "But not tonight." Noah stepped from the shadows, the battered case at his side, his voice calm. "The world sees now, Keen. There's no burying it again." Keen's eyes locked on Jack, a snarl twisting his lips. "You think this will stop me?" Jack's voice was ice. "No. But it'll start the end of you." And as the final images played, the ghosts of the fallen rose, no longer silent, no longer buried. The truth had a voice, and tonight, it was roaring. The room felt like it was holding its breath. The final frames of the tape burned into the retinas of everyone there, faces pale, eyes wide, the lies of decades cracking under the weight of truth. The silence that followed was thick and electric, a moment suspended between past and future. Jack stepped forward, every eye on him. Keen's face was a mask of cold fury, the last of his practiced charm shattered. "You son of a bitch," Keen spat, his voice low and dangerous. Jack didn't flinch. "No more lies, General. No more graves in the sand." Rachel stood at Jack's shoulder, her voice steady. "The world's watching. You can't silence this." Noah moved closer, his eyes hard. "You tried to bury the truth in blood. Now it's your turn to answer for it." Keen's jaw clenched, his voice a snake's hiss. "You think this ends me? You think the truth matters in a world built on power?" Jack's stare was unbroken. "It matters now." Keen's hand dropped to his side, his fingers curling around the grip of a concealed pistol. The move was slight, but Jack saw it. "Don't," he warned, voice like iron. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath again. Then Keen's lip curled, and he drew the weapon in a single, fluid motion. But Jack was faster. His father's sidearm barked once, the shot echoing like thunder in the marble hall. Keen staggered, a dark bloom spreading across his chest. He dropped to his knees, the pistol clattering to the floor. "You think this changes anything?" he rasped, blood on his lips. Jack stepped closer, his voice low and sure. "It changes everything." Keen's eyes went glassy. He fell forward, the final weight of his sins pulling him down. In the shocked hush that followed, Jack felt the ghosts of the past settle, silent, but finally at peace. Rachel touched his arm, her voice a whisper. "It's done." Jack's breath shuddered out. "No," he said. "It's just begun." The chaos of the ballroom spilled into the night, blue lights and sirens slicing through the darkness. Outside, the press had already gathered, their cameras capturing the birth of a new reckoning. Jack stood in the cold night air, the weight of the mission still heavy in his chest. Rachel wiped the blood from her hands, her eyes hard but resolute. "They'll come for us now." Keen was the first. "The others will try to sweep this away, erase us like they erased your father." Jack nodded, his voice quiet but unwavering. "Then we make sure they can't. We give the files to the world. Every tape, every name. No more shadows." Noah emerged from the building, the battered case in hand, his face lined with exhaustion. "The files are secure. We'll get them to every outlet, every whistleblower we can find." Jack met his gaze, gratitude flickering behind the steel. You did good, Noah. My father would have trusted you with this. Noah cracked a tired smile, clapping a hand on Jack's shoulder. He always said the truth was worth dying for. Turns out, he was right. Rachel moved closer, her voice low. What about Eli? He gave us the final piece, but he's still a wild card. We can't leave him in the wind. Jack's eyes were cold and clear. I know. We find him. We bring him in, or we end his threat. No more loose ends. The night air felt sharper now, each breath laced with the knowledge that their war was far from over. But Jack felt no fear, only purpose. He looked at the skyline, the city glowing beneath the cold stars. We did what my father couldn't. We brought the truth into the light. Rachel nodded, her hand resting on her rifle. And now we keep it there. In the distance, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, pale and cold, but real. Jack felt the weight of the past lift, just enough to let him breathe. The war for truth was just beginning. But for the first time, it was a war they would fight on their own terms. By sunrise, the tapes had spread across every screen, every channel. News anchors read the names with grave voices, the weight of decades of lies laid bare for all to see. Across the city, protests sparked like wildfires, voices demanding justice, demanding the blood price of the past. Jack stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, the wind cold against his face. He watched the crowds gather, their voices rising in a chorus that refused to be silenced. Rachel joined him, her breath clouding in the air. They're listening now, she said softly. Jack's voice was steady. Because we didn't let the truth die. Noah stepped up beside them, the lines of exhaustion etched deep in his face, but his eyes bright. We'll have to stay ahead of them, Jack. Keen was just one head of the snake. The others will come for us. Jack nodded, the steel in his spine unbending. Then let them. We're ready. Rachel's hand rested briefly on his shoulder. You did it. You gave your father the justice he deserved. Jack's throat tightened. He looked out over the city, his mind flashing to his father's final message, words spoken in the darkness, a promise forged in blood. He gave me the courage to see it through, he said quietly. Now it's our turn to keep it alive. Below them, the crowds grew, their chants rolling through the streets like thunder. Jack felt the weight of every lost voice, every soul they'd sworn to remember. We're not ghosts anymore, he said. We're the reckoning. The sun rose higher, painting the city in the clear light of a new day. Jack felt the fire in his chest burn steady, a promise that would not be broken. The world was watching now, and they would not look away. The city felt like a powder keg ready to explode. Jack knew their window to act was closing. Keen was gone, but the men who stood with him, those who profited from the silence, were still out there. And they would come. That's why they were heading into the desert. Jack steered the battered truck down an endless stretch of cracked highway, the sun a pale coin in the morning haze. Beside him, Rachel kept her rifle across her lap, her eyes scanning the barren horizon. Noah rode in the back, the files locked in a steel case between his feet. The desert stretched out in every direction, an ocean of dust and memories, a place where the past whispered beneath the sand. Noah spoke softly, his voice barely audible over the rumble of the engine. You sure about this, Jack? This place, it's the graveyard of the ghost company. You go there, you're stepping into the bones of everything your father tried to stop. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. That's exactly why we're going. If Keen's allies want to finish what he started, they'll come here. And we'll be waiting. Rachel gave a grim nod. We're not here to die in the desert, Jack. We're here to bury the last of their lies. The sun climbed higher, turning the world to a shimmering furnace. Jack felt sweat trickle down his spine, but he didn't waver. In the distance, the outline of the old military base rose like the ghost of a fortress, half buried in the dunes, silent and waiting. As they approached, Jack felt the weight of it settle over them. This was the place where his father had drawn his final line, the place where the truth had been left to rot. Not anymore. Jack parked the truck at the edge of the ruins. He stepped out, the sand hot beneath his boots, the air dry as old bones. This ends here, he said quietly. Rachel's voice was steady, her hand on his shoulder. For the ghosts. For the truth. And in the shadow of the desert sun, they stepped forward, three warriors, carrying the fire of the past into the heart of the last lie. The base was a labyrinth of rusted steel and crumbling concrete, the silence broken only by the wind moaning through shattered windows. Jack led the way, his father's sidearm in his hand, every step a prayer for the fallen. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the scent of oil and dust thick. Faded signs still clung to the walls. Authorized personnel only. Secure area. Echoes of an empire built on silence and blood. Noah swept his flashlight in slow arcs, the beam catching on bullet-scarred walls and the ghost of old footprints in the sand. "This place, it's a tomb," he said softly. Rachel's voice was a whisper. "Then let's finish the burial." They moved deeper, the shadows growing thicker, the weight of memory pressing on them like a physical thing. Jack's mind replayed the tapes, the reports, every whispered order, every name scrawled in the margins of a secret war. Here, in these walls, the last chapter of his father's story waited. They found the final archive room behind a reinforced steel door. Rachel worked the lock with practiced hands, each click a heartbeat. "We're in," she said, pushing the door open. Inside, the room was a vault of memory, shelves lined with files, tapes, old reels of footage. The light of the flashlights danced over them, bringing the dead back to life. Jack moved to the center table, his fingers tracing the worn leather of a journal marked with his father's name. He opened it slowly. The paper yellowed, the ink faded but unbroken. "This is it," he said, his voice tight. "The last piece." Noah scanned the shelves, his eyes hard. "Let's pack it. Everything. We're done running." Rachel watched him, her voice low. No more running. No more ghosts. The silence of the desert pressed in around them, but Jack felt a calm certainty settle in his chest. They had the truth. They had the voices of the fallen. And now, they would take it back into the light. Hours passed as they worked in the vault, their breath misting in the cold air. The tapes hissed as they played, crackling voices, desperate orders, the final confessions of men who had once believed themselves untouchable. Jack watched one reel, his father's face flickering in the grainy footage. The general's eyes were hollow but fierce, his voice steady despite the weight of the words. "We were sent to erase the enemy, but we became the enemy. I will not let these sins be buried. The Ghost Company stands for the truth, even if it costs us everything." Jack's throat tightened, his father's final vow like iron in his blood. Rachel's eyes met his across the table, the flicker of the footage painting her face in harsh light. "He died for this, Jack. But he didn't die in vain." Jack nodded, his jaw set. "No, he left it for us to finish." Noah pulled a box of tapes closer, his voice low. "We get this out, they can't silence it again. This is the bullet that will bury every last one of them." They worked in grim silence, the tapes a chorus of the dead, proof that the world had turned a blind eye, that power had fed on innocence. Each reel they packed away was another piece of the puzzle, another voice that could no longer be silenced. As they finished, Jack closed his father's journal and tucked it into his jacket. The final heartbeat of the man who had refused to be a pawn in another man's war. "We're ready," he said, his voice calm. "We take it to the world. We end this." Rachel gave a nod, her hand gripping her rifle. "Then let's go, Jack. Let's finish what your father started." Outside, the desert waited. But in that vault, the truth had already begun to breathe again. They left the vault as the sun began to set, the sky a blaze of dying light. Jack felt the weight of the files in his pack, every step a promise to the past, and a warning to the future. They made camp near the old watchtower, the desert wind singing around them. Rachel tended a small fire, her face calm in the flickering light. Noah checked the radio, static crackling as he scanned for any sign of pursuit. Jack sat apart, his father's journal in his lap. The final page was a confession, a plea written in a hand that trembled but never wavered. "I tried to stop it. I failed. My son, if you find this, know that I died for the truth. Let it live on in you." Jack's breath shuddered out, the words cutting through him like a blade. He looked up at the desert night, the stars cold and distant. "I found it, Dad," he whispered, "and I'll carry it home." Rachel watched him, her eyes soft but unyielding. "You don't have to do it alone, Jack." He looked at her, the firelight painting her face in gold and shadow. "I know, but it's my burden to carry." She reached out, her hand warm on his. "No, it's ours." Noah turned from the radio, his voice a low rumble. "We leave at dawn. Keen's gone, but his allies will come for us. We'll be ready." Jack nodded, his grip on the journal tight. "We're not just soldiers in a war anymore. We're the last line of the truth." The fire cracked and hissed, sparks rising into the endless sky. In the darkness, Jack felt his father's presence, silent, but no longer alone. The final chapter was waiting, and Jack would not let it end in silence. Dawn broke over the desert, pale light washing the sand in ghostly silver. Jack and Rachel loaded the files into the truck while Noah checked the perimeter, his eyes hard and watchful. Jack felt a calm resolve settle over him. The pieces were finally in place. Every sin documented, every betrayal recorded. Rachel glanced at him, her voice low. "This is it, Jack. We bring the last of their secrets into the sun." Jack gave a tight nod, his father's journal secure in his jacket. No more lies. No more graves in the dark. As they prepared to leave, a crunch of footsteps cut through the hush. Eli stepped into the clearing, his face shadowed, eyes darting from Jack to the truck and back. "Eli," Jack said, his voice calm, "you're running out of chances to do the right thing." Eli's jaw clenched, sweat beading on his forehead. "You think you've won, Jack? You think those files will change anything?" Jack's voice was a blade. "They already have. Your part in this, you can still make it right." For a moment, Eli's mask slipped. He looked at Jack, something like regret flickering in his eyes. "I didn't want it to end like this. But Keen's allies, there's no running from them. They'll kill me if I help you." Noah stepped forward, his voice low and lethal. "Then you stand with us. Or you stand alone." Eli hesitated, then his shoulders slumped. "I'll help you get out. There's a back road, an old supply route. They won't expect it." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Why should we trust you now?" Eli's voice was ragged. "Because I'm done living in the shadows. I can't carry it anymore." Jack studied him, then gave a slow nod. "Show us the road. And pray you're telling the truth." The desert wind howled around them as Eli led the way, toward the last stand of the ghost company, and the final reckoning of the war they had all been born into. The old supply route was a narrow path of cracked earth, winding through canyons that looked like they'd been carved by the hand of time itself. The truck rattled over stones, dust billowing behind them like a ghost's breath. Jack sat in the passenger seat, his father's sidearm balanced on his knee. Rachel drove with steady hands, her eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds. Noah rode in the back, his face set, the battered case of files clutched tight. Eli guided them from the front seat, his voice low. "The ridge ahead, there's an old checkpoint. Keen's men won't expect us there." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we make our stand there if we have to." The truck crested a rise, and Jack saw it, a rusted guard tower, half buried in the sand. It felt like the edge of the world. Rachel pulled the truck to a stop, the engine ticking in the silence. "This is where we draw the line," she said. Noah opened the back door, stepping out into the cold dawn air. "We're not here to run anymore. We're here to end it." Jack climbed out, the file strapped to his chest. He looked at Eli, the man's face pale, sweat trickling down his temple. "You stand with us," Jack said, his voice calm but unyielding. Eli swallowed hard, then nodded. "I stand." They moved to the tower, taking positions. Rachel on the ridge with her rifle, Noah setting the files for upload on a battered laptop, the satellite link crackling to life. Jack watched the horizon, the desert stretching out in endless silence. In the distance, the dust of approaching vehicles rose, a promise of blood and final truths. Jack felt the cold certainty settle in his bones. "Let them come," he murmured. "This is where it ends." The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of sand and gun oil. Rachel's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Ready, Jack." Jack's breath was steady, the ghost of his father's voice in his mind. For the fallen. For the truth. The first shots came in the hush of dawn, bright flashes in the desert twilight. Bullets cracked off the rusted tower as Jack and Rachel returned fire. Each shot measured, every breath a promise. Rachel's voice was calm in his ear. 2 on the left ridge. Moving to flank. Jack's pulse was steady, the recoil of his father's sidearm a heartbeat in his hands. Copy. Keep them pinned. Noah worked at the laptop, his fingers flying over the keys. The files, everything they had gathered, every sin and secret, were streaming out into the world, unstoppable. "Signal's good," he said, voice tight. "The world's seeing it, Jack. All of it." Jack fired again, the report of the shot echoing off the canyon walls. He saw Eli crouched behind a boulder, his face pale with fear. "Eli, cover the right." Eli nodded, his hands shaking but his eyes hard. "I'm with you, Jack." No more running. The attackers moved in careful arcs, trying to box them in. Jack counted their shapes in the dust, soldiers in black, Keen's last dogs. Rachel's rifle cracked, and one of the shapes fell, a dark smear in the sand. "They're pushing hard," she said, her breath ragged. Jack's voice was steel. "Then let them. We're not leaving this ground." The radio on Noah's belt crackled, a voice hissing in the static. "You think you've won, Jack Ward? The world doesn't care. Power writes the final story." Jack's jaw clenched. "Not today. Today, the truth writes its own story." He rose from cover, his breath cold in his lungs, and fired again, the shot clean and sure. Rachel's voice was a fierce whisper. "For the ghosts, Jack." Jack's heart hammered, but he felt no fear. Only the fire of everything his father had fought for, everything they refused to let die. The desert roared around them, and Jack knew this was the final stand. The battle was a blur of dust and fury. Jack moved like a man possessed, each shot an echo of the promise he had made. No more lies, no more graves in the dark. Rachel's voice was a steady cadence in his ear. Left side moving. He turned, his father's sidearm barking, the flash of the muzzle slicing through the dust. A man fell, another ghost in the sand. Noah's voice cut through the crackle of gunfire. "Signal strong. Upload's almost done." Jack ducked behind a slab of concrete, sweat burning in his eyes. "Keep it going, Noah. That's our bullet. They can't kill that." Rachel shifted her position, her rifle snapping out the rhythm of justice. She caught Jack's eye across the chaos, her voice a fierce promise. "This ends today, Jack. No more running." Jack nodded, his breath harsh, the desert sun a white blaze overhead. "Then let's bury them in the truth." Eli scrambled to reload, his hands shaking but his eyes steady. "I'm done hiding," he gasped. "Let them come." Jack met his gaze, a spark of respect between them. "Good. Stand with us." The attackers faltered, the weight of the truth breaking their lines. Noah looked up from the laptop, his face pale but resolute. "It's done, Jack. The files are out. The world sees them now." A single moment of calm fell across the canyon, an exhale of relief and finality. Jack rose slowly, the sidearm heavy in his hand, his father's name a prayer on his lips. "Then it's over," he said softly. Rachel stepped to his side, her voice a whisper. "For the ghosts." Noah's eyes were bright, the hint of a smile at the corner of his lips. "For the truth." In the silence that followed, Jack felt it, the weight of the past lifting, the burden shared and carried forward. The last lie buried in fire and ashes, and the world awake to the truth they had fought so hard to reclaim. As the last shots faded into silence, Jack stood in the ruin of the desert outpost, breath ragged and eyes hard. The wind swept the sand in swirling eddies around him, the echoes of the fallen lingering like ghosts. Rachel lowered her rifle, her shoulders heaving with the weight of the final fight. "We held, Jack," she said, her voice low but resolute. "They're finished." Noah emerged from behind the laptop, the battered case still humming with the files that had changed everything. He wiped sweat from his brow, his face lined but triumphant. "The truth's out there. No one can deny it now. Jack turned his gaze to the horizon, the sun dipping low and red against the vast sky. He felt the memory of his father's voice in the hush of the desert wind. "We did it, Dad," he whispered. "No more shadows. No more silence." Eli staggered to his feet, his face pale and streaked with dust. For the first time, his eyes were clear, no longer the eyes of a man running, but of a man finally standing still. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for everything." Jack studied him for a long moment, then gave a single nod. "We all have blood on our hands, Eli, but you stood with us in the end." They moved back to the truck, every step heavy with the weight of what they'd survived. The files were safe, the world was awake, but Jack knew this was only the beginning. The war for the truth didn't end in a single battle. It lived on in every voice raised against the darkness. As the truck rumbled to life, Jack felt a quiet strength settle in his bones. They had carried the ghosts of the past into the light, and in that light, they had found their own redemption. The drive back was a silent one. The truck rattled over the broken desert road, the endless horizon painted in streaks of fading light. Jack sat in the passenger seat, his father's journal in his lap. Each word felt like a heartbeat, a final whisper of the man who had refused to let the truth die. Rachel drove with a soldier's focus, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. Noah sat in the back, his head resting against the cold steel of the case. Eli sat beside him, his gaze distant, haunted but at peace in a way he hadn't been in years. Jack turned the last page of the journal, the final words etched into the paper like a prayer. "Let the truth live on. Let my son finish what I began." He closed the book, his jaw tightening. "I will, Dad," he whispered. "I swear it." Rachel's voice cut through the quiet. "What happens now, Jack?" "The files are out. The world's seen the truth." Jack looked at her, his eyes steady. "Now we watch. Now we stand ready. There will be those who try to twist it, to bury it all over again. We don't let them." Noah stirred in the back, his voice rough. "We're not soldiers anymore, Jack. We're witnesses. Guardians." Jack met his gaze in the mirror, the faintest ghost of a smile at the corner of his lips. "Then that's what we'll be." The truck rolled on, the city lights growing on the distant horizon, a promise and a threat. Jack felt the weight of the files, the final heartbeat of the mission. He knew there would be no rest, no quiet end. But he also knew the silence had been broken. The ghosts of the past had found their voices, and they would not be silenced again. They reached the outskirts of the city as dawn painted the skyline in molten gold. The streets were already alive with the tremor of change, sirens wailing, news vans parked at every corner, people flooding the avenues with raised voices and banners held high. Jack stepped from the truck, the weight of the mission still on his shoulders. But now it felt like armor, not chains. Rachel fell in beside him, her eyes scanning the restless crowds. "They're not afraid anymore," she said. Jack watched the people, faces young and old, eyes lit with the fire of justice. "Because they finally know the truth," he said quietly. Noah joined them, the battered case in his hands. "We did it, Jack. We gave them what they needed." Jack looked at him, his voice steady. "And now we stand with them. This is their fight too, Noah." Eli climbed out of the truck last, his eyes red but clear. He looked at the crowd, the swell of voices, and for the first time, he didn't flinch. "No more shadows," he said. Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. "No more ghosts." They moved as one into the city, the files in hand, the weight of the past a promise to the future. The people surged around them, voices rising in a single, unified cry, "No more lies, no more silence." For the first time, Jack felt the full measure of what they had done, not just for his father, but for every life lost to the darkness. He felt the sun on his face, the warmth of it washing away the last of the cold. And in that light, he knew they had kept the truth alive, and they would not let it die. The city square was alive with the pulse of voices, a living testament to the power of truth. Jack stood at the edge of the crowd, his eyes bright with resolve. Beside him, Rachel and Noah stood like sentinels, the files clutched in their hands, the final record of everything they had fought to bring to light. Jack's voice was quiet, but it carried in the stillness. "My father gave his life for this," he said. and we gave everything to finish it. Rachel nodded, her voice strong. The world is watching now, Jack, and we're ready to stand in that light. Noah cracked a tired smile. We're not soldiers anymore. We're the last line of the truth. Jack looked out over the crowd, the sun rising behind them like a promise. Then let's be that line, no matter what comes next. The city was alive with possibility, every voice another heartbeat in the growing chorus of change. Jack felt his father's spirit in that noise, the echo of every soldier who had refused to be silenced. He felt the weight of their legacy settle into his bones, not a burden, but a purpose. A promise he would never break. Rachel's hand brushed his arm, her voice quiet but sure. For the ghosts, Jack. And for the living. Jack nodded once, the fire in his chest steady and bright. For the truth. Always. As the sun climbed higher, the city roared with life, no more shadows, no more silence. And Jack stood in the heart of it all, unbroken. The war was over. The fight for the truth would never end. And he would be there, always, ready to stand in the light. The morning air was sharp with the scent of sweat and smoke as the city square roared with chants and banners. Jack stood at the edge of the crowd, feeling the pulse of every voice, a testament to the power of truth that could no longer be silenced. Rachel was by his side, scanning the restless energy around them. They're not just listening, Jack, she said, her eyes shining. They're demanding justice. Jack's heart thudded in his chest. My father would have stood with them. Noah joined them, his face lined with exhaustion but his eyes bright. He is, Jack. Every name in those files, they're here too. They're speaking through us. A woman stepped from the crowd, tears streaking her dust-smudged face. She held a battered photograph in trembling hands. My brother, he died in the sand. They said it was an accident, but I never believed it. Jack took her hand, his voice soft but certain. Now you know the truth. They can't hide it anymore. The woman nodded, her tears a silent vow. For him, she whispered. For all of them. The square felt electric, a living, breathing force. The files Noah held were more than paper. They were the heartbeat of every lost voice, every soul that had been silenced. Rachel's voice was quiet but strong. They tried to erase the truth, Jack. But it's alive in every one of them. Jack looked out over the sea of faces, the weight of his father's journal pressing against his chest. Then let's carry it forward. For the fallen. For those who can't stand here with us. Noah's jaw tightened, his voice a low growl. For the ghost company. And in the rising light of the morning, Jack felt the ghosts of the past stand with them. No longer hidden in the shadows, but alive in every voice that refused to be silenced. They found a quiet corner near the square, the noise of the crowd muffled by the heavy brick walls. Jack leaned against the cold stone, his breath ragged from the weight of what they had unleashed. Noah stood across from him, the battered case still in his hands. They'll come for us now, Jack. We've pulled back the curtain. They won't let us walk away unscathed. Jack's eyes were hard, unflinching. Let them come. We're done hiding. Rachel joined them, her eyes fierce. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of 100 new battles. But the truth is out there now, and they can't put it back in the ground. Jack nodded, the weight of her words settling into his chest. We'll stand for it, no matter what they throw at us. Noah cracked a tired smile. That's what your father would have done. That's what he died for. A pause fell between them, thick with memory. Jack reached for his father's journal, the worn leather warm against his fingertips. He flipped to the final page, reading the words that had become his compass. The truth is a burden and a weapon. It can't be broken, only carried forward. Rachel's voice was soft. And we'll carry it. Every day. Jack closed the journal and tucked it into his jacket, the final echo of his father's voice settling into his bones. Then let's be ready. The city was awake, the world's eyes open and unblinking. And Jack knew that from this moment on. The price of silence was one he would never pay again. As the crowd began to disperse, Jack and Rachel moved through the narrow alleys, each step a promise to the fallen. Noah trailed behind, the files locked tight in his grip. The weight of them was heavy, but it was a weight they would not let go. Rachel's voice broke the quiet. Your father, He left more than just orders and files, Jack. He left a map to something bigger than any of us. Jack glanced at her, his brow furrowed. What are you talking about? She reached into her jacket and pulled out a crumpled note, her fingers smoothing it with care. He left this for me years ago. I didn't understand it then, but now I see. It's a message, Jack. A final mission. Jack took the paper, his breath catching as he read the words. Coordinates. Cryptic phrases that only made sense in the light of what they had uncovered. He knew it wouldn't end here, Jack said, his voice low. Rachel nodded. He trusted you to finish it. Noah looked at them both, his eyes dark but resolute. Then let's not waste it. Let's finish it. Jack folded the note carefully, the weight of his father's final words sinking into his soul. We will. For him. For all of them. The sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the city in warm gold and long shadows. Jack felt the fire in his chest burn brighter than ever, a promise, a burden, and a purpose that would never be silenced. The coordinates led them deep into the industrial outskirts, the city's glow fading behind them as steel and concrete rose around them like the bones of a forgotten empire. Jack drove with steady hands, every mile a heartbeat of his father's final mission. Rachel studied the note, her brow furrowed. This place, it's where the first ghost company mission began. The birthplace of the lies that built the empire. Jack's voice was a quiet thunder. Then it's where they end. Noah checked the files once more, the weight of them etched into the lines of his face. If there's anything left to find here, it's the final piece of the puzzle. The last secret they buried. They pulled up to an abandoned factory, the wind whispering through broken windows. Jack stepped out, the air sharp and metallic. This is it, he said. Rachel's voice was calm but sure. We finish it tonight, Jack. No more ghosts. They moved through the shadows of the factory, each step a memory of the men who had walked these halls before them. Jack felt his father's presence in every rusted beam, every echo in the dark. Dad, he whispered, his voice tight. I'm here. I'm listening. Rachel found the door first, a steel barrier marked with old blood and bullet scars. She looked back at Jack, her eyes steady. Are you ready? Jack nodded, the fire in his chest a living promise. Always. They stepped through the door into the dark, the final chapter waiting for them in the silence. And in that silence, Jack felt no fear, only the unwavering certainty that the truth was alive, and he would carry it forward. The steel door groaned as Jack pushed it open, the air inside cool and heavy with dust. The beam of his flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch into forever, walls lined with faded propaganda posters, the echoes of a war that never ended. Rachel moved ahead, her rifle steady in her hands, every muscle taut. This was a command center, she said softly, her voice echoing in the silence. The birthplace of every lie they fed us. Jack stepped forward, his father's journal clutched tight in his hand. He could feel the weight of the past in these walls, the ghosts of men who had written history in blood and darkness. Noah scanned the space with wary eyes, the glow of his phone flickering in the half-light. There's power here, he murmured. Something still alive in the wires. They reached a heavy metal door at the end of the corridor. A keypad blinked softly, the numbers worn by decades of forgotten hands. Jack ran his fingers over it, then reached for the note Rachel had given him. The final code, scrawled in his father's careful hand. Rachel leaned close, her breath steady. Are you sure, Jack? He nodded, his voice low. This is the end. It has to be. He punched in the numbers, each beep a drumbeat in the stillness. The lock clicked open with a finality that settled deep in his bones. Jack pushed the door open and stepped into the dark. The room beyond was a control center frozen in time, dust-covered consoles, old screens flickering with static, maps marked in red and black. And at the center, a single metal cabinet, locked and waiting. Rachel's breath caught. This is it. Jack moved to the cabinet, his hand trembling as he reached for the latch. The past was here, every secret, every name. And he was ready to bring it home. The cabinet door swung open with a rasp of old hinges, the smell of rust and stale air heavy in the small room. Inside, stacked neatly, were rows of tapes and files, final testimonies of men who had believed themselves untouchable. Jack reached for the top file, his father's name scrawled across the front in bold, black ink. He opened it slowly, the paper yellowed and fragile in his hands. The first page was a confession, a letter written in a hand he knew as well as his own. "If you're reading this, Jack, then you've already walked further than I ever could." Jack's breath shuddered out, the words cutting deeper than any blade. "I tried to stop them, son. I tried to end it. But they were always ahead, always willing to bury the truth in another grave." Rachel moved closer, her eyes soft in the glow of the flashlight. "He never stopped fighting, Jack, even when he knew it would kill him." Jack swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "I know, and I won't let it die with him." He turned the page, the words growing darker, lists of names, operations buried under layers of silence. Proof of every crime, every sin. Noah's voice was low, full of awe and sorrow. This is everything." Jack met his gaze, a cold fire in his eyes. "Then we take it all. We bring it to the world." He carefully packed the files, every page another voice that refused to be silenced. The weight of it was heavy, but it was a burden he welcomed, a burden he had been born to carry. As they turned to leave, Jack paused, his hand resting on the cabinet. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered. And in the silence that followed, he felt his father's spirit settle around him, a quiet strength that would not be broken. They emerged from the factory as the sun began to set, the sky painted in streaks of crimson and gold. The city waited in the distance, alive with the fire of a truth that could not be silenced. Jack carried the file strapped to his chest, every step heavy with purpose. Rachel walked beside him, her expression a mask of fierce determination. "They'll come for us now, Jack. Everything we have, it's the bullet in their heart." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we make them see it. We make them feel every word, every name." Noah loaded the last of the gear into the truck, his breath steady in the chill evening air. "We're ready," he said. "Whatever comes next, we're not turning back." Jack looked back at the factory, the final resting place of 1,000 secrets. He felt the ghosts in those walls, men who had lived and died in silence, their voices now alive in the files he held. "No more hiding," Jack said softly. "No more graves in the dark." Rachel touched his arm, her voice a quiet promise. "For the ghost company. For every life they tried to erase." Jack nodded, the weight of her words settling deep in his chest. "For the truth." As the truck rumbled to life, they drove away from the ruins, into the heart of the city that waited for them. Jack felt the road beneath them, every mile another vow. They would not be silenced. They would not be buried. The truth was alive, and they would be its voice until the last breath left their lungs. The city swallowed them in a rush of noise and light, sirens wailing in the distance, the glow of the skyline rising like a promise of war. Jack felt the weight of the files on his chest, the final heartbeat of a mission that had begun long before he was born. Rachel sat in the passenger seat, her fingers drumming a silent rhythm on the door. "We'll get the files to the press, Jack. We'll show them the faces of the men who thought they could erase the world." Jack's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of every life they had sworn to honor. "We show them the truth, and we stand ready for the price." Noah's voice crackled from the back seat. "They'll come fast. You know that." Jack met his eyes in the mirror, unflinching. "Then we hold the line. Like my father did." The truck turned onto the main boulevard, the streets choked with people, protesters, reporters, bystanders drawn to the roar of history and motion. Jack felt the pulse of the city in his bones. Rachel's voice was soft, but fierce. "We're not ghosts anymore, Jack. We're the reckoning." He reached over, squeezing her hand once, a silent promise between them. "For the fallen. For the truth." As they pushed deeper into the city, Jack felt the final pieces click into place. The files were ready, the world was awake, and the last lie was about to be buried in the light of 1,000 cameras. The final chapter was here, and Jack was ready to write it in fire and steel. The truck cut through the crowded streets, every turn bringing them closer to the city center, where the weight of everything they carried would come crashing down. Jack watched the crowd through the windshield, protest signs held high, voices roaring in the cold night air. The city was alive, electric with fury and hope. Rachel's eyes scanned the avenues, every movement precise. The square's packed, Jack. We have to be ready for anything. Jack nodded, the file strapped to his chest like a second heartbeat. We show them the truth, no matter the cost. Noah leaned forward, his face a map of resolve and exhaustion. I have a contact in the media, someone who won't look away. We get this to them first. Then we broadcast it ourselves if we have to. Jack's jaw tightened. We do both. We make sure they can't bury it again. The truck slowed as they approached the square. The roar of voices grew louder, a wave of sound that seemed to shake the air itself. Jack felt the weight of every name, every story in those files pressing against his ribs. Rachel's voice was a low promise. For the ghosts, Jack. For your father. He met her gaze, the flicker of the city lights in her eyes. For every life they tried to erase. They stepped out into the street, the cold night air a slap against Jack's skin. He took a breath, steady and sure. Around them, the city roared, no more silence, no more shadows. Let's finish this, he said. And together, they walked into the heart of the storm. The square was a living sea of voices, thousands of people pressed close. Their eyes turned to the steps of the courthouse where the first cameras waited. Jack could feel the files in his hands, the final testament of 100 lives stolen and silenced. Rachel moved at his side, her hand brushing his arm, a silent anchor in the storm. We're here, Jack. This is the moment. Noah found the contact from the press, a young woman with a camera in hand and a fire in her eyes. You're the ones who brought this, she said, her voice tight. We'll show it. Every word. Jack's voice was calm, but it carried like thunder. Then let the world see. No more lies. Rachel stepped forward, her voice strong as she addressed the reporter. The files, they're everything. Names. Orders. The last breath of every soul they tried to bury. The reporter swallowed hard, her hands steady as she took the drive from Jack. We'll broadcast it live. No edits. No mercy. The cameras turned to them, the red light blinking like a heartbeat. Jack felt the weight of it settle over him, the final witness to everything his father had fought and died for. He looked at the crowd, the faces turned to him, every breath a promise that they would never be silent again. We're not here for revenge, he said, his voice clear. We're here to make sure the truth lives. For my father. For every voice they tried to erase. A hush fell over the square, the words hanging in the cold night air. And in that silence, Jack knew. This was the moment his father had given everything for. The cameras blinked, the world watching. And Jack was ready. The air was electric as the reporter spoke into the camera, her voice a calm defiance. Tonight, we bring you the final words of the men they tried to bury. Tonight, the truth lives. Jack stood just behind her, Rachel and Noah at his side. The files lay open on the makeshift table, the words of the dead glowing in the cold white light. Jack could feel his father's presence in every breath, an echo in the roar of the crowd. Rachel's voice was a low murmur. They'll see this, Jack. All of it. They can't bury it anymore. He nodded, his jaw set. They'll try, but we'll stand in the light. The first file played on the screen, a flickering video of his father, eyes hollow but fierce. I'm General Douglas Ward, and I'm done with silence. Gasps rippled through the crowd, the raw power of the confession cutting through the cold night air. The video played on. Names, missions, the final testament of a man who had refused to die in the dark. Jack felt his throat tighten, but he kept his voice steady. He died for this. But the truth didn't die with him. Noah's hand rested on his shoulder, a silent promise of solidarity. You finished it, Jack. You carried it home. Jack looked at him, his eyes bright with the fire that had carried them this far. We did it together. My father, he's free now. The truth is free. As the last words played, the crowd fell silent, the weight of the dead settling in every heart. And in that silence, Jack knew they had kept the promise. The final words of his father echoed in the hush of the square, every soul there held captive by the power of a man who had refused to be broken. Jack stood in that silence, the files in his hands, his heart a quiet thunder. Rachel's eyes were bright, her breath misting in the cold. "It's done, Jack. No more shadows. No more silence." Jack nodded, his voice soft but sure. "For the ghosts. For the truth." Noah looked at the crowd, his face worn but resolute. "They'll try to twist it, Jack, to spin the truth into something they can use. But we'll be here. We'll stand." Jack met his gaze, a quiet resolve in his eyes. "We'll be the line they can't break." The cameras blinked off, the final broadcast playing across 1,000 screens. And in that light, the weight of every lost life found a place, no longer buried, no longer denied. Jack looked at the faces in the crowd, the young and the old, the hopeful and the haunted. He felt the fire of their voices, the promise in their eyes. "This isn't the end," he said, his voice carrying in the stillness. "It's the beginning of something new, a world where the truth doesn't die in the dark." Rachel stepped closer, her voice fierce. "And we'll keep it alive, Jack. Every day, every breath." The city was alive around them, the night no longer a shroud but a promise. Jack felt his father's presence settle in the hush, no longer a ghost, but a voice carried forward in every heart that refused to bow to silence. In that moment, Jack knew they had not just survived the storm. They had become the storm, and the truth would never die again. The square slowly emptied as dawn broke over the city, the sky painted in streaks of pink and gold. Jack watched the light creep over the courthouse steps, the final broadcast still flickering in windows and on screens across the square. The truth had found its voice, and it roared in every corner of the city. Rachel stood beside him, her eyes steady as the sun rose. "You feel it, Jack?" The weight shifted. "They're not just seeing the truth, they're ready to fight for it." Jack's gaze swept over the quieted square, every banner, every voice still echoing in the cold morning air. "It's what my father died for. What we all fought for." Noah emerged from the crowd, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion, but his eyes alight with something Jack hadn't seen in him before: hope. "We've done it. We gave them the truth. But you know what comes next." Jack's voice was steady, every word etched in steel. "The pushback. The men in the shadows who can't let the world change." Rachel's jaw tightened. "Then we stand ready. This is just the beginning, Jack. They'll try to bury it again, but we won't let them." Eli moved closer, his face pale but resolute. "I owe you more than I can repay, but I'm done hiding. Whatever you need, whatever comes next, I'm with you." Jack placed a hand on his shoulder, the faintest smile flickering across his face. "Then we stand together. For the living. For the dead." The city was alive behind them, but Jack felt the quiet strength in their small circle. They weren't just survivors, they were the guardians of the truth now, and they would never let it be silenced again. By noon, the news had spread beyond the city. Every channel, every feed carried the weight of the files they had unleashed. Jack watched from the back of the truck as headlines scrolled across giant screens. Ghost Company files revealed the final truth. Noah's voice was calm but edged with steel. "They're already trying to spin it, Jack. Talking heads, politicians, they're calling it a hoax, a betrayal." Jack's jaw tightened. "Let them talk. The people know the difference now. The voices of the dead, they're louder than the lies." Rachel adjusted her rifle, her eyes scanning the rooftops. "We have to be ready. There's no going back. They'll come for us, maybe not tonight, but soon." Jack met her gaze, his own calm but unbreakable. "Then let them. We've carried the truth this far. We'll stand as long as it takes." Eli spoke softly, his voice almost a prayer. "The past is done, Jack, but the war's not over. There's still blood in these streets, still those who'd rather see it all buried again." Jack's breath was slow and measured. "We're not the ones burying it. We're the ones who dig it back up. And we'll keep digging until there's nothing left to hide." The city rumbled around them, 1,000 voices rising in protest, in defiance, in hope. Jack felt the truth settle in his chest, heavy as steel but alive with fire. He looked out over the skyline, his voice soft but resolute. "We're the line, Rachel. The last line. And we will not break." As night fell again over the city, Jack and his team moved with purpose. The files had been given to the world, but there was one last piece they had to secure: the master record, hidden deep in the archives of the city's military headquarters. Jack adjusted the strap of his pack, the weight of the files balanced by the weight in his chest. Rachel moved ahead, her rifle slung low but ready, her every step measured. Noah pulled up the schematics on his phone, the glow of the screen painting his face in harsh blue light. Security's tight, Jack. This isn't like the outpost in the desert. These men know what's at stake. Jack's jaw was set, his eyes hard. Then we're careful. We're in and out, no mistakes. Eli's breath was tight as he checked his weapon. They'll come for us the second we trip an alarm. We have to be ghosts tonight. Rachel glanced back, her voice low but sure. We've always been ghosts, Jack. Now let's finish this. They slipped through the alleys, the cold night air sharp in Jack's lungs. He felt every sound, every flicker of movement, every breath a promise to those who had come before. At the edge of the compound, they paused. Jack looked at each of them in turn, his voice calm but unyielding. This is the last lie, the last secret. We bring it into the light. No matter what. Rachel's hand brushed his arm. For the ghosts, Jack. For your father. And with that, they moved, silent, focused, the weight of the truth in every step. The first fence fell quiet under their touch, the wire cutters working in the dark like whispers of the past. Jack felt the cold steel bite into his palms, but he didn't slow. The final vault lay ahead, every step a heartbeat echoing with the weight of the mission. Rachel moved like a shadow, her rifle steady, her breath calm. Left corridor, clear, she whispered into her earpiece. Noah's voice was low and focused. Right side secure. Moving to the inner gate. Jack's pulse thundered in his ears, but his hands were steady. He felt the weight of the files strapped to his chest, the final testament of the men who had refused to die in silence. He reached the inner gate, the keypad blinking softly in the dark. He punched in the code, the numbers from his father's final notes, each one a promise etched in blood and memory. The lock clicked open, the heavy door swinging in with a groan of old hinges. The vault beyond was a cathedral of secrets, rows of servers, cold blue light flickering across endless banks of data. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. This is it, Jack. The last piece. Jack stepped forward, his voice low and sure. Then let's take it. Let's finish this. Noah moved to the console, his fingers flying across the keys. I'm in. Pulling the files now. This is everything, Jack. Every order, every lie. We're done hiding. Jack felt the weight of every name, every sin settle over him like a cloak. We're not done, he said softly. We're just getting started. The final pieces of the puzzle locked into place, the truth alive in the flicker of screens and the steady breath of those who refused to let it die. And in that cold, silent room, Jack felt the ghosts of the past stand with him, unseen, but never silent. The hum of the servers filled the vault like a heartbeat, the cold blue light washing over Jack's face. He watched Noah work the console, lines of code flickering across the screens as he pulled the last of the files from the darkness. Rachel stood at his side, her eyes scanning every shadow. This is everything, Jack, she said, her voice calm but fierce. Every lie they buried, every truth they killed to hide. Jack nodded, the weight of it settling in his chest. Then we don't leave anything behind. We take it all. Eli moved to the door, his breath ragged. We have to move fast. I heard them on the radio. Someone's coming. Noah's voice was low but sure. Almost done. Just another minute. Jack's jaw tightened. He looked at the files streaming across the screen. Names, dates, operations that had stained the ground in blood. His father's voice seemed to whisper in his ear. You finish what I started, son. You bury the lies in the light. Rachel's hand brushed his arm, grounding him in the storm. They'll come for us, Jack. But we're not the ones in the dark anymore. Noah pulled the final drive from the console, his eyes bright in the pale glow. Got it. This is everything. Jack took the drive, feeling its weight, small, but heavy with every secret they had unearthed. Let's move. Before they closed the doors. As they turned to leave, Jack paused. He looked back at the vault, the quiet hum of voices that had once been buried in darkness. Thank you, he whispered. for giving me the strength to carry it home." And with that, they stepped back into the night, no longer ghosts in the shadows, but the living voice of a truth that would not die. They moved through the compound like wraiths, every step measured, every breath steady. But the stillness didn't last long. The first crack of gunfire split the night, bright sparks of death in the cold air. Rachel dropped to a knee, her rifle up, eyes cold and focused. Contact. 2 on the left. Jack's pulse roared in his ears. He fired back, his father's sidearm steady in his hands. "Noah, keep moving. Eli, cover the rear." They slipped through the maze of concrete and steel, the night alive with the clash of metal and the thunder of footsteps. Noah's voice was a rasp in the dark. "We can't outrun them forever, Jack. We need an exit." Jack scanned the alleys, his mind working fast. "There's a service tunnel, old supply route. Rachel, take point." She moved like a shadow, leading them through the narrow corridor. Bullets hissed past, tearing through the rusted metal as they ran. Eli fired back, his breath ragged. "I thought I was done running, Jack." Jack's voice was ice. "We're not running. We're finishing this." They reached the tunnel, the air thick with dust and memory. Jack slammed the door behind them, the echo of gunfire fading into the hush. Rachel's eyes met his in the dark. "We're almost there. Don't stop now." Jack's breath was steady. "We're not stopping. Not until the last truth is free." The tunnel stretched out before them, a path cut through the bones of the past. And in that dark, Jack felt the ghosts of the fallen at his back, pushing him forward. The tunnel opened onto the outskirts of the city, the skyline a jagged crown of light and steel. Jack felt the cold night air wash over his face, the weight of the final drive in his hand a promise that would not be broken. Noah slumped against the wall, sweat glistening on his brow. "We can't stop here. They'll be right behind us." Rachel scanned the dark streets, her rifle still at the ready. "There's an old safe house near the river. We hole up there, get the files to the world. This ends tonight." Eli's breath was ragged, but his eyes were clear. "I'll draw them off. Give you time to get clear." Jack's voice was calm, but it cut like steel. "No more sacrifices, Eli. We go together." They moved quickly, every step a vow. The safe house was a relic of another war, bricks pitted by old bullets, windows boarded against the night. Jack felt the past alive in those walls, the echo of every promise made in blood. Inside, Noah set up the final transmission, lines of code scrolling like a prayer across the battered laptop. "This is it, Jack. Once I hit send, there's no taking it back." Jack's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of every ghost that had come before. "Then do it. Let the world see the truth." Rachel's hand closed over his, her voice steady. "For your father, Jack. For every soul they tried to silence." Jack nodded once, the fire in his chest steady and unbroken. "For the truth. Always." The files streamed out into the world, the final transmission painting the night in bright pulses of data. Jack watched the lines of code, every name, every sin, a final defiance in the face of the darkness. Noah leaned back, his breath ragged, but his smile fierce. "It's done. They can't bury it again." Jack looked out the window, the city alive with the first light of dawn. "Then let them come. The truth is alive, and it will not die." Rachel moved to his side, her voice a quiet strength. "We're not the ghosts of the past anymore. We're the light that keeps it all alive." Eli sank to the floor, tears streaking the dirt on his face. "I never thought I'd see the day. I thought the darkness would swallow it all." Jack knelt beside him, his hand steady on Eli's shoulder. "Not anymore. The truth doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the world." The city woke around them, the first rays of sun painting the skyline in gold. Jack felt the fire in his chest burn brighter than ever, a promise that no bullet could kill, no lie could bury. He looked at Rachel, Noah, and Eli, 3 warriors who had carried the truth through the darkness, 3 souls who would never let it fade. "This is only the beginning," Jack said, his voice sure. "The world has seen the truth, and it will never close its eyes again." In that first light of dawn, the weight of the fallen lifted, replaced by the quiet strength of the living. And Jack knew, with every beat of his heart, that they had not just finished a mission. They had begun something that would never die. The city was alive with the fire of the truth as Jack stepped out into the dawn light, the air crackling with the roar of voices that refused to be silenced. The final transmission was out, but the battle was far from over. Rachel moved beside him, her face shadowed but her eyes bright with the light of 1,000 promises. "They know now, Jack," she said, her voice steady and sure. "They can't pretend anymore." Jack nodded, his breath white in the cold morning air. "They'll try to spin it. They'll call us traitors. But the world has seen the truth. It has a voice now." Noah stepped out of the safe house, the battered laptop clutched in his hands like a final relic of the war they had fought. The networks are already on fire. Protests, calls for justice. This isn't just a story anymore, Jack. It's a reckoning. Jack felt the weight of every name they had unearthed, every sin laid bare. The ghosts of the fallen walked beside him in the hush of the dawn, their voices carried on the cold wind. "This was never about revenge," he said quietly. "It was about the truth, about giving them back their voices." Eli stood at the edge of the square, his face pale, but his shoulders straight. "I spent so long hiding in the dark. I thought it would eat me alive. But today, I see what you saw, Jack. The darkness can't hold forever." Jack met his gaze, a faint smile flickering across his face. "No, it can't. And we're here to make sure of it." The first rays of sunlight painted the square in gold, the cold warmth of a new day washing over them. Jack looked at his team, Rachel, Noah, Eli, and felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. They were the line, the last defenders of the truth. And as long as they drew breath, the darkness would never silence them again. The square was a tide of voices now, no longer just echoes of protest, but a roar of defiance and hope. Jack stood at the heart of it, the final drive in his hand, the last words of a war that had been fought in silence for too long. Rachel moved to his side, her rifle slung across her shoulder, her voice calm in the roar of the crowd. "They're waiting for you, Jack. They need to hear it from you, from the son who carried his father's last fight." Jack looked at her, the memory of his father's face flickering in his mind. The final words in the journal still burned in his chest. "Let the truth live, even if I don't." He stepped up onto the courthouse steps, the cold stone solid beneath his feet. The crowd quieted, 1,000 eyes turning to him. Jack felt the weight of their hope and their grief, the burden of every name in the files pressing on his shoulders. His voice was quiet, but it carried in the hush. "My name is Jack Ward. My father died for the truth. And today, we bring it into the light." He held up the drive, the final testament of every soul who had been lost in the dark. This is their voice, their story, and it will never be silenced again. A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd, building to a roar that seemed to shake the cold air itself. Jack felt it wash over him, a tide of belief, of defiance, of something larger than any of them. Rachel's hand found his, her grip warm and steady. "For the fallen," she whispered. "For the truth," Jack answered, his voice fierce. In that moment, the city was alive with the light of 1,000 truths. And Jack knew, the fight was not over. But it was no longer a fight they fought alone. The final testament had been written, in the blood of the past, in the light of the present. And it would not be forgotten. The day had fully broken as Jack stood on the steps of the courthouse, the final testament of the fallen still clenched in his hand. The crowd spread out before him like a sea of hope and defiance, their breath a living chorus in the cold air. Rachel moved to his side, her face streaked with sweat and determination. "This is it, Jack," she said, her voice a quiet promise. "No more shadows. No more fear." Jack nodded, his gaze sweeping over the faces that watched him, some angry, some grieving, all of them awake in a way he had never seen before. "We did what my father couldn't," he said softly. "We brought the truth into the light." Noah joined them, his tired eyes bright with purpose. "We didn't do it alone, Jack. The truth belongs to everyone now." The files were gone from their hands, but not from the world. The echoes of the dead lived in every word that had been broadcast, in every soul that had heard and refused to forget. Jack felt the weight of it, heavy and beautiful, a burden he would carry gladly for the rest of his life. Eli stood at the edge of the steps, his voice barely above a whisper. "What now, Jack? What comes after the truth?" Jack took a breath, the cold air filling his lungs like a vow. "Now we stand watch," he said. "Now we protect what we fought for." Rachel's hand closed over his, a steady anchor in the shifting tide of the city. "And if they try to bury it again?" she asked. Jack's voice was soft but unbreakable. "Then we dig it back up. Every time." The crowd began to chant, their voices rising with the sun. No more silence, no more fear. Jack felt the power of it settle in his bones, the echo of a promise that would never fade. And in that chorus of voices, he felt his father's spirit settle beside him, proud, unbroken, alive in the truth that would never die. As the sun climbed higher, the city square was alive with possibility. Jack stepped back, the final testament of the fallen now part of the world's memory. His father's journal was safe in his jacket, every page a heartbeat that would never be silenced. Rachel looked at him, her eyes bright with something that felt like peace. "We did it, Jack," she said softly. "We gave them their voices back." Jack turned to Noah and Eli, the men who had stood beside him when everything seemed lost. "We gave them the truth," he said, his voice full and steady. "But it's not just ours to guard now. It belongs to every soul who believes in it." Eli's voice was a quiet echo. "Then we stay ready, Jack. We stay the line." Jack nodded, his gaze sweeping the square. "For my father. For every name in those files. We stand, and we never let the darkness win again." The city was alive around them, the voices of the living and the fallen rising together in a single, unstoppable promise. Jack felt the weight of it settle in his chest, not as a burden, but as a light, bright and unyielding. He turned to the camera one last time, his voice calm, but edged with the fire of every vow they had made. "The truth has a voice now," he said, "and it's in every one of you. Will you stand with us?" He paused, his eyes searching the crowd, searching the lens. "Where are you watching this from? Tell us in the comments. Let the world hear your voice too." A small smile touched his lips. "And if this story moved you, if it lit that same fire in your chest, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because the truth doesn't end here, and neither do we." The camera pulled back, the final shot of Jack and his team framed against the rising sun, the city alive with the voices of the fallen and the living. And in that final breath of silence, the question echoed, "Will you stand with us?"